It's funny that I get paid to do what I used to get a detention for years ago. Um, my friends and I, we just love to draw on our notebooks. I didn't really fill in the inside of the notebooks too much. I kind of spend more time on the outside. We were really into our groups and music and all that, and we just wanted to draw. And back then we didn't have a lot of drawing. There was not a lot of drawing classes. The art classes were fairly generic. In fact, I didn't even like them. I still have a thing about paper mache to this day. But we just wanted to draw. And we used to draw in our notebooks, and we used to get detention for what they call defacing school property. That's what we got. And so I encourage people now to just keep going with their passions, and hopefully this will help you to move forward in your career. So today I'm going to show you how I started and how I developed my career. Maybe it'll help you. I used to love drawing cartoons. This is stuff that I used to do. I started drawing at the age of 10. I used to cut out the cartoons out of the newspaper. Marvin and Garfield were my favorites. And I used to just redraw them. I didn't try to draw my own cartoons. I just copied what they did because I didn't have proper instruction. And but I just love that pen and ink. I still got those portfolios today. I spend a lot of time drawing. As you can see, I'm a stellar, I was a stellar person in school. You really see that you've got a promising career in illustration when your illustration mark is 59%. Not a positive if you want to get moving further down the line. But this is what I did, and this is, how I got going. So at the age of 17, I decided to leave school. I wasn't doing well. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't going. And, so my father said, you know what, if you want to leave school, that's fine, but you're not sitting at home. Go get a job. And I ended up getting a job with a moving company, just, moving the furniture out and helping the drivers. And then I ended up liking it, and I got my license as a professional truck driver, and actually ended up owning my own unit. And I've been in that industry for over 30 years to this date. So I really enjoyed it. I liked to drive. I always had a passion for driving. So trucking was a great thing. I went 18 years. So from that point, I drove for 18 years. And then a time in life came where I ended up going through a divorce. And I didn't know about it. It was a surprise to me. And I was kind of devastated. And if you've ever been through a divorce, guys, you get two boxes. One has the pots and pans they didn't want, and the other one had my art supplies. And I had my old sketchbooks, my old pencils, and I got back into it. I was living in a shared accommodation. There was no TV really, and I ended up just getting back into my art. And I really got back into it. At that time, I was taking some counseling, and I thought, you know what? They said, why don't you go back to school and just finish up? So at the age of 40, I went back to school and got my diploma. And, one of the projects that we had to do in school, I took things like entrepreneurship and business, and I really enjoyed school now because I was able to pick the courses. I'm probably a lot more mature, and I was able to pick things that were of interest to me. And it's funny that one of the products were training books and tapes, because in our business today, we have training books and tapes. So it's a little weird that that's what happened, but if you follow what you believe in and you follow what you get compelled to do, then you will do it. We started doing our Bruce Outridge Productions part-time in 2003. I was just doing commissions. Neighbors would have me commission their house, or I liked drawing a lot of old buildings. I stayed with pen and ink. I never really kind of left pen and ink, and I would just do a lot of. I liked a lot of the homes. I liked working with pen and ink. In 2004, we had our first solo show. It was all black and white pen and ink like this one here, and really we did well. And that kind of put the bug in that there's a possibility here that I might be able to do this on a bigger scale. But I was still on the road, still working, and so I didn't really think more than that. But that bug kind of got in there. As I was working at this, I was working for a chemical company where we would deliver water treatment chemicals to our customers. And they were a pretty big company to the point where they had an open house every year. And this open house, you could bring your family, the neighborhood, kids, all that kind of stuff would come. And so I did this comic book called ZDD. One of the processes for our delivery was zero defect delivery. And I thought this would be a great way for the kids to understand what we do, put it in kind of a fun form. Gave it to the company. I said, hey, listen, I think this would be great for our open house. Why don't you guys print it up and we can give it out? They said, great. There's one problem with big companies. By the time they approved it all, the event had gone by. So it never did make it to light. But it was my first experience in doing a comic book. This was around 2005. And, I just thought, wow, like just trying to figure out, it's one thing to design it on computer. It's another thing or on the paper, but then to have it printed out and getting the pages in the right order. And you got to do, if you're doing a page layout, you got to get the first page and the last page, and it builds in. And we had a heck of a time because I think I did this in like a PowerPoint presentation is how I designed it. So it was a real learning curve, but it was one, again, that was just putting in, a lot of my career has been just little pieces put in, and it just keeps building. I continued doing commissions, so if we had somebody retire, I had a guy on my team retire. By this time, I was now the supervisor of the team, and things were not going well. I was overworked, just pretty well stressed out, never seemed to be able to relax. We had bought a bunch of trailers from a company called Glass Van Great Dane Trailers, and they had asked me to do they saw my artwork and said, would you do a picture for our wall in the maintenance shop? And so I did a picture, and that was one of my first commissions that I did. I said, oh wow, someone actually likes my work. So this was the first time that I'm doing more than just the commission from a neighbor or something like that. I started getting calls from companies outside of my neighborhood, which again put another little bug in. This was a banquet facility that said, would you do one? They were having some kind of an event where they wanted to have a giveaway for their people. So I did this commission of their building, and this went well. I then got another one, which was people want color. I still like pen and ink, but people wanted color. But I got this one here. This is Don Cherry's wife. She had a home for people who are out in their last days, and so I was commissioned to do that and got invited to their gala and all that kind of stuff. We're now at the end of 2006. Things are not well at work. And I'm thinking, I'm continue doing these little commissions. I'm doing this tight pen and ink technique, which takes about 30 hours to do a picture. It was quite involved. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it. And we were having a big issue at work, and I quit. At the end of 2006, I just said, I've had enough, and I'm going to go out on my own. And we decided to just keep doing that, and I decided I was not going to get another job. And we started going to parties and started networking, and I started getting commissions. I'm thinking, I can do parties. This is great. And so we thought, trucking magazines are going to love this stuff. I can illustrate the life of the driver. And so I started down that road. But the problem was I was still doing cartoons, traditional style, pen and ink with some watercolor. That does not work well for print. The whole business was going digital. I was not digital. And so when I was turning stuff in, it was not what the magazines wanted at the time. They were looking more for that digital look, and I found that nobody was getting my commission. So I could have given up, but I didn't. I started teaching, so I went to the Art Society. I took all the teaching I could get. I was teaching cartooning, I was teaching adult pen and ink, I was teaching whatever I could. But I also went back to school and I was doing digital work. And once I started doing digital, I went back to the same place where I graduated from. I believe in adult education. I went back there and I took things like the photography, so I could learn Photoshop. I learned how to do web design. I learned how to work with Illustrator so that I could start doing logo design. So we started getting into that phase of logo design, and this is what I was teaching. This is what got us going from a business standpoint. So we were doing this kind of stuff here. This is our logo design. And then I started getting asked to do caricatures. And the thing about caricatures is that I had been asked to do caricatures a few times while I was teaching cartooning, and I didn't really know what caricatures were. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to give them this, I don't want people throwing cake across the room and, all that kind of stuff. I had been a truck driver. I'm used to being on my own. I wasn't used to being in the middle of a party. But I kept getting asked and asked to do it. And so I finally investigated, and I said, okay, so what do you do? Really, what I was worried about is that I could not draw fast enough. That was my really big issue with doing caricatures. I said, how did these guys do this in 3 minutes flat? I did not understand that. So I started investigating. I bought all the books I could find on caricature, and I started looking into it. And lo and behold, we started doing events, and we started doing gift caricatures. And I remember my first event to this day. I was just surrounded by people. It was a college or university night, where they're graduating. And I'd never seen so many people. I don't remember anything other than people. I'm sure the drawings were terrible. But I was just like, wow, this was just way too much. I kept going. So we started doing a lot of shows. We're doing a lot of truck shows at the time because that's what I was doing. And when it was slow, I decided to start doing the guys' trucks. And so I would go around to people and say, would you like your truck done? And I would take a picture, and I would do it in the booth in between when we had crowds. And I started getting a following there. The problem is that we got so many that I had to stop doing it. And we started doing them only in the studio and taking orders instead of doing them on site because people wanted them, and we just did not have enough time over a 2 or 3 day event, so we stopped doing that. In 2008, though, I decided to release a comic book. I thought, okay, what brought me to where I am? What can I do to help kids? I started the Pride Junkie comic book series. It's the Pride stands for passion, respect, integrity, dignity, and excellence. And I thought, you know what? And Junkie is kind of anybody that's into anything, right? And so I thought the Pride Junkie sounded like a cool name. And so I put out an issue every year, and it was Hero's a truck driver, and he goes around and he just, there's a good value in each story. There's 3 issues out. I put an issue out every year, and we now have put them only online. We're not selling them out anymore, but we put them online, and now that's where you can go and see them. So this is an interior page of the last issue here, one of the interior pages. So this is what it looks like, and so this we've put online, and kids can read it there. I started getting commissions from bigger and bigger companies because now we were online. Petro-Canada, I had started going digital, at least with my color, not with the drawing yet. So it taught me to deal with big customers. We started getting bigger commissions, these group commissions. And this one here, 2 Crew, 1 Cup, was I was online. I used to be on sites like Guru and stuff like that, Elance. A lot of them are not around anymore, but I used to have a profile on a lot of those sites, and I would get the odd job through them. And this was one of the jobs. I remember the guy saying to me afterwards, he said, that was the most difficult illustration that they ever had to do. I guess what they were doing was taking the illustration that I had done, projecting it onto a banner, and then they were doing it by hand on the banner. I didn't realize that until afterwards, but it turned out to be quite a project, so he said. Then we started getting a lot of commissions from trucking magazines and trucking companies. So this one here, in particular, was a trucking company, LoadLink, and they do freight matching software and that kind of thing. And they were looking for ways to advertise in magazines without it being a picture. And so these are some of the advertisements I did for them. And they would, give me the idea of what they wanted, and then I would go and create a cartoon based on that. And they've been very popular ever since. Because I went back to school, I had taken a creative writing course, and I started getting into writing. And Collar to Collar was a magazine that I produced for a couple of years, and it was very hard, very intensive, but I enjoyed it. So I took my articles and I took my illustrations and I matched them up, and I had interviews with people, and that's the kind of start of what kind of started and what I'm doing today. But I did it in writing form back then. So this is like 2011. In 2011, I launched my first book, How to Start an Artistic Business in 12 Easy Steps. that's how it got in. And again, all of this is experience from business and from my trucking industry past that I'm now using in a lot of these books and a lot of my content. I got involved with some of the magazines, the trucking magazines in the industry, and they were asking me for cartoons. So I ran a strip called Highway Blues for a couple years where it was just different cartoons, all based on the trucking industry, and they were the cartoon here. And then I did a strip called Bears and Knuckles, which is about two truck driver misfits that get paired together and they get into all kinds of situations to do with the industry. And that ran for a couple of years in Road Today magazine as well. And so this was a good way for us to get, to get published that way. And it was fun to do. We kind of stopped doing them now that we moved on, but each one lasted a couple of years, so it was pretty good. And what I was doing is I was taking those magazines, when I did them for the magazines, I owned the copyright for them. And then afterwards, after a while, not right away, but after a while, every couple of years, I would take all the cartoons from those years, throw them into a book, and I would sell them as a volume. So there's a couple volumes out that are only available on ebook now. I've stopped selling them paperback. They're just available on ebook, but they're fun. They're fun to read. We were selling them at fairs and that kind of thing, and it was fun to do. Then some of the other magazines caught on to the cartooning, and I started getting commissions from other magazines. And this one here, and you can see a lot of my stuff is on the trucking industry because that's the industry that I'm in. And this one here, you may not recognize him if you're not in the industry, but there is a television show called Ice Road Truckers. Alex, the guy in this Rest Area Rant cartoon, is one of the stars of the show. So the magazine I was working with on contract, they would get the rights to use his image, and then they would give me basically the copy and what they wanted, and then I would illustrate it in a comic book form. Then we started getting other companies in the trucking industry that would send us illustrations or ask us to do illustrations and advertisements for their products and services. So we did a lot of stuff with trucking companies. And it's funny how the network works. So if you're not networking with people and thinking that the only time that you actually build a business is when someone pays you, then you might be wrong. So this Roadbirds album cover, all of these people are truck drivers. And the Face magazine is the one that actually started the Roadbirds, and they hired me to do their album cover and all the design work, their logo, I did their logo, all of that kind of stuff. So you get a lot of work that way. Somehow this launched, and I don't know how it happened, but this launched group illustration. At this point, we started getting a lot of caricatures that were groups. This one here on the right has 35 people in it. I'm not going to count them out, but there's roughly 35 people in there. And we started getting a lot of stuff like that to where people are just always looking for groups. And this has been very popular. A big area for us is the group illustration. So we do a lot of that kind of work today. We never got rid of the trucks, and this one here was a lady who got me from Australia. And she saw my trucking illustrations online, and she commissioned me to do one of her particular truck. Her and her husband are both drivers, and she asked, would you do one of our truck? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. We did that one, charged her for it. Everything's done by email, didn't have to deliver it. She printed it out on her side and gave it as a gift. Lo and behold, a few years later, probably about a year later, her and her husband decided to start a t-shirt design company. They could not find trucking seat. So Get Trucked Oz is their shirt. I've been doing their line. We've got about 3 or 4, we've probably got about 4 or 5 shirts I think we've done to this day. And the same with JBT Transport. That was somebody from the Face magazine. And now I do some advertising and stuff for them. And so it's really, building a network is really important thing to do. So now what do we do today? We do a lot. We do everything from animation to video to art instruction to speaking to web design, everything we do. We've got podcasts out for artists. So we do a lot. And you know what? But it's all grown one by one on what we used to do before. So if I could say one thing, it would be keep drawing. Keep drawing on your notebook if that's where you draw. Success might be right under your nose. A lot of us do not realize it, and this is a way to do that. So it's not what you do, it's what you do with it. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that, and we will talk to you later.